Hi, seventh graders. I am here again with you to talk about your story for this week's lesson. And we're going to focus on the science fiction story, Dark They Were and Goldeneye. So this is a science fiction text. So kind of think about the genre of science fiction. Think about characters, the settings, events that basically they are not bound by an era of contemporary conceptions of reality. So when you think about science fiction, think about what comes to mind when you hear the word or read the word science fiction. Think about science, technology. Think about how they defeat the limitations within that story. Think about how the characters change. They may be human, they may be non-human, they may change from human to something other than human. So think about how the author writes a science fiction story and what changes they go through within the story. And within science fiction, they often reflect or comment on important contemporary issues that interest or excites the reader. So if you're a fan of science fiction, I'm a fan myself. I love watching sci-fi movies or even reading sci-fi stories. This story, might spark an interest in you. So we're going to identify and analyze elements of science fiction. And we're going to also kind of pay attention to the mood of the story. All right. And you're going to do some more research based on the dangers that comes with space exploration. Okay. So when you're going through this story, I want you to kind of pay attention to some of the figurative language that's used in this story. So, Dark They Were and Goldeneye, a science fiction tale by Ray Bradbury. So they give you a little blurb within this about the author. Ray Bradbury, he has written a number of stories, including Fahrenheit 451. Even he had a short series, Ray Bradbury Theater, that featured many of his short stories. So he's a pretty popular science fiction author. All right. So going through, when you are going through reading your story, make sure that you are filling in all the charts that kind of help you get into that mindset of reading a science fiction. And like I said, with mood, we're going to look at the mood within the story. How does the mood change? How does it shift based on the word choice that the author uses? Okay. So critical vocabulary, make sure you go in. You have words convivial, stubbly, idle, forlorn, recede, pendium, muse. Make sure that you go in. Use those context clues and fill in your critical vocabulary exercise. Language conventions. You're going to briefly go over verb tense. And verb tense should be very familiar to you. So I'm going to let you go ahead and do those things on your own. And remember, when you are using HMH online, make sure you are in Foxfire and using Google Chrome, because if you use Internet Explorer, it may not work as well in loading in all the graphics. All right. So, like I said, read the information about Ray Bradbury. It tells you a lot about him. So going into the story, pay attention to the elements of science fiction that appears in the story and the references to personal and social issues. So kind of pay attention to this little phrase here. Notice the author's choice of words and consider why they contribute to the mood of the story. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started reading parts of this story to you. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to analyze and annotate the story by answering the questions within the text. All right, so here I go. The rocket metal cooled in the metal winds. Its lid gave a bulging pop. From its clock interior stepped a man, a woman, and 3 children. Oh, it's setting something up here. It's introducing your setting. It's introducing your characters. The other passengers whispered away across the Martian meadow, leaving the man alone among his family. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep on reading. The man felt his hair flutter and the tissues of his body draw tight as if he were standing at the center of a vacuum. His wife, before him, seemed almost a whirl away in smoke. The children, small seeds, might at any instant be sown to all the Martian climes. The children looked up at him, as people look up at the sun to tell what time of their life it is. His face was cold. "What's wrong?" asked his wife. "Let's go back on the rocket." "Go back to Earth?" So, we have a mood question here. It says, annotate paragraphs 1 through 6. Highlight details that reveal the man's first response to Mars. And I'm looking at my interpretation question. How would you describe the man's first impression of Mars? How might his feelings affect the mood of the story? So I'm going back. Up to paragraph 1. So I'm kind of skimming through based on what I read. I am going to highlight this last little part of the paragraph 1 right here. So it's kind of setting off the mood right there. Leaving the man alone among his family. So he's standing there. He's trying to take in everything that's in front of him. So I'm going through. Oh, the first sentence here. The man felt his hair flutter and the tissues of his body draw tight. So that means there's a sense, kind of like a nervousness or something like that. So I'm going to highlight that part there too. And some other things I'm going to highlight. His wife seemed almost a whirl away in smoke, and also his children, what's mentioned about his children. So his response from the question of his wife. Let's get back on the rocket. So that right there kind of creates that big mood. So basically, I'm going back to my question. How would you describe the man's first impression of Mars? How might his feelings affect the mood of the story? So I'm looking at this. He felt tense, maybe stressed, or even nervous. So I'm putting my response here. The man felt tense, stressed, or nervous. And why is he nervous? This, based on his new environment, based on the words in the new environment, he has a look on his face. This is not where we're supposed to be. This is what I'm getting out of as I read. So this man wants to go back home. His impression is, I want to go back home. I don't want to be here. So I'm going to put that in there. So the word, tight, that's mentioned in the first part of the story, shows that the man wants to go back to Earth. Period. So I'm reading this. Everything is set in another place. It's not their normal life. So I'm going to go ahead and keep reading. And reading this is going to intensify and tell me exactly what's going on in the story. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going. Yes, listen. The wind blew as if to flake away their identities. At any moment, the Martian air might draw his soul from him, as marrow comes from a white bone. He felt submerged in a chemical that could dissolve his intellect and burn away his past. Oh, a lot of figurative language within paragraph 8 here. He looked at Martian hills that time had worn with a crushing pressure of years. They saw the old cities lost in their meadows, lying like children's delicate bones among the blowing lakes of grass. "Chin up, Harry," said his wife. "It's too late. We've come over 60 million miles. Oh, so they traveling from world to world here. So I'm going to keep reading. The children with their yellow hair hollered at the deep dome of Martian sky. There was no answer but the racing hiss of wind through the stiff grass. He picked up his luggage in his cold hands. "Here we go," he said, a man standing on the edge of a sea, ready to wade in and be drowned. They walked into town. So here's another question here. Highlight details in paragraphs 8 through 13 that the authors used to create a feeling about the setting of the story. So I'm going to do that in just a second. So I'm going to look at my question. It kind of gives me an idea when I go back up into my paragraphs. Does the author create a positive feeling or a negative feeling about the setting? What words help create this feeling? So I'm kind of, it's all about mood. So I'm going back up. So I'm going back up to 8. Like I said, paragraph 8 has a lot of figurative language in here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this little part of this sentence here. Air might draw his soul from him. So think about that mood as I'm highlighting this. Also, too, another one, he's submerged in a chemical that could dissolve his intellect and burn away his past. I'm going to highlight that, too. A lot of figurative language. So I'm going through other words that might create that mood. Worn with a crushing pressure of years. I'm highlighting that. And I'm moving down. The racing hiss of wind through the stiff grass. I'm highlighting that. And this last part here, I'm going to highlight this entire paragraph, paragraph 12. Because this right here is creating the mood that they're not home anymore. Their normal life is basically uprooted. So I'm going out. So I'm going to go back to my question. Does the author create a positive feeling or a negative feeling about the setting? What words help create this feeling? So I'm looking at this. The words creates a feeling of loneliness. Maybe something that's forgotten. So words like I said, racing hiss of wind and stiff grass, all that, it kind of, it's not normal for them. So I'm going to go ahead and put into my answer here the first, I'm sorry, can't spell this morning. First description. If I can spell it. Shows a feeling of loneliness and forgottenness in the setting. Forgotten in the setting. Sorry about that. So like I said, words like old cities, racing hiss of wind, stiff grass. He's trying to create a mood, a setting of being lonely and forgotten. Where are they? They're in a Martian land. That's what you need to kind of pay attention to. So I'm going to go ahead and keep reading.